Hi, thank you for joining us today. We are excited to be together with you now that school has started. Grateful that we get to spend some time with you talking about our road to academic recovery. We are going to be joined today, or we are being joined today by Daphne Carter, our Chief Academic Officer and State Superintendent. And together, Daphne and I are just going to be talking with you and having a conversation about, where we are academically after last year, the year of COVID, and how we see the path towards academic recovery and socio-emotional recovery for our students. Well, it has been quite a 2 weeks. We started school about 10 days ago now. And, we have had a really strong start, which we're pretty excited about. We have definitely, all of our kids are back in person, all 32,000 children back in our school buildings. It has been really fun to visit our schools. We have been, yeah, I was in Dallas yesterday and just got to see our teachers and our leaders creating such brave and belonging spaces for our children, where they could really have conversation and um, really dive into teaching and learning. I was in one of our schools, KIPP Connect High School, on the third day of school in a pre-calculus class, and really got to see teachers in that pre-calculus class diving into complex content and thinking about what question to ask children during a turn and talk, and was so excited to see that on the third day of school. We're really pushing excellence in academics. We are pushing content immediately as school starts up, and we're diving in. And we're also very focused on our equity work in our schools, as well as focused on teaching and leading with empathy. As we look back on last year, we're really proud of the work that we did around making sure that our schools were safe places. And that feels even more important today as we look at, the COVID raging around us in our communities. And we're really proud that we were able to provide, $1.6 million in direct aid to our families through our COVID-19 and beyond relief fund, and then provide $850,000 in direct aid to families after Winter Storm Uri. We were really proud that we were able to provide well over 1 million meals to families and community members throughout the course of the year, as we were, when our schools were closed. And so there were things, I think, that we did in the community and for our families that we really look back on and are proud of. And I think the thing that we did that we're most proud of is we really took care of our kids and our staff and our families, and made sure that they felt seen and heard, and really just felt like they were the humans that they were, right? And so that's something that we look back on with pride. And we also look back and know that we have a lot of work to do as it comes to academic recovery. And we're diving into a school year that, while we are really excited about a strong start, we are also well aware that there are lots and lots of COVID cases in our communities. We are really happy that when anecdotally there is, almost 100% adherence to mask wearing in our schools. When we look around, our kids are wearing masks, our teachers are wearing masks, and that provides a level of safety that we are really happy about and proud of. We also know that we're continuing all the safety procedures that worked so well for us last year, and we have doubled the number of kids in our buildings. And so we are really being thoughtful about safety. And we know that contact tracing is incredibly overwhelming for our schools right now with double the number of kids in our buildings, that it is taking a tremendous amount of time and energy for our schools. And so we are trying to lift up supports for our schools around contact tracing, as we are still remaining incredibly focused on the most important work ahead of us, which is teaching and learning and academic recovery. So with that sort of lay of the land of how the first 10 days have gone, I'm going to turn it over to Daphne Carter, our Chief Academic Officer and State Superintendent, to talk with you a little bit more about academic recovery and about our socio-emotional recovery plan for our students. Daphne, you're on mute, but I know you're saying some really brilliant things.
I was making sure my door was closed so I can take my mask off since I'm going to say quite a few words this morning and want you to be able to hear me. Good morning. I am excited to share with you information about our academic recovery and also about our strong start since we are now in day 10 of school. So I'll start with our strong start. We spent this summer for about, I would say, 8 weeks of the summer. It was a very short summer for us. I'm really preparing our leaders and our teachers for a strong start. And we said the first 21 days of school are the most powerful and impactful days of the school because we set the foundations for not only a strong culture, but strong academics. And then we say a strong start is the first for about like 6 to 8 weeks of school. And we spent a lot of time ensuring that our schools were ready for this, not only on preventive measures and mitigation of risk of COVID spread in our schools and those safety measures, but also for academics. And we've heard all over the state and our 4 cities that this is the strongest start we have, despite the number of COVID cases and despite the impact of this pandemic on our schools. So we credit so much of that to the cohesive and collective work we did this summer. And so when you look into sort of just take a virtual visit into our schools, if you get an opportunity, you'll see brave and belonging spaces where our students are showing up in an environment that's not only affirming, but welcoming to them. You'll see cultural responsive teaching as we talk about what is best for children of color as they fight the pandemic of COVID alongside some of the racial reckoning in our country. What does it mean to have a teacher who will look you in your eyes and say, I care about you and I'm super excited to be your teacher? And so that was one of our goals in this first 10 days, that every student would get a 5-minute conference, social distancing, of course, where an adult checks in on them. How is your family? How are you doing in this pandemic? And lifting up needs. We also had each student take a needs assessment to really think about the psychological and safety of our students. Food, clothing, housing. Do you need it? Does your family need any of these things? Because we know we have to take care of those needs in order to really, really educate our children in a strong way. Then you see academics in our classrooms. Our teachers are intellectually prepared. I was sharing with someone yesterday that I had a chance to look at our student writing. Day 9 of school, student writing, right? Grades 2 through 12, and saw strong evidence of critical thinking. And we looked at writing for students who have IEPs and students who are learning English as one of their languages, and to see the power of their voice and what they've learned so far. So we're super excited about what we see in our schools. Happy to say that all of our schools are fully staffed with a leader and a leadership team. Our talent team worked really hard, and we're 98% staffed with teachers. All of the openings that we're currently experiencing are openings that just came open in the last couple of weeks. But we went into this school year like never before. And so I could not be more proud of our leaders and our teachers. So we're starting strong because we know we have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do with unfinished learning. Our achievement is not where it needs to be or should be. And so we have hit the ground running with unfinished learning and knew that a strong start was paramount to that. So I'm now going to move into addressing unfinished learning. Our students have experienced more unfinished learning over the last year. This is the third school year that this pandemic has interrupted. It's the third school year it's impacted. And so when we start to really think about that, we think about not just the unfinished learning over the last year, but the unfinished learning for 2 school years. And now we face a critical choice about how to respond. The pandemic is still having an impact in our schools. The difference is we're smarter, we're stronger, we have more practices in place. So we can still do both. We can educate our children and do it in a safe environment. So research shows that traditional remediation is not going to be the approach to help our students address the unfinished learning. A better approach is academic acceleration, and I'm going to talk more about that. But what that basically says is that the critical work that we have to do to ensure students are exposed to grade level material every single day, the grade level that they're in, is actually paramount to addressing unfinished learning. So that's a headline for our approach. Next slide. So let's talk about unfinished learning by the numbers. Last school year, we had to restructure our school day. KIPP usually has longer school days, right? Well, we had to shorten that school day in order to do a number of things, mostly to make sure our teachers had time for planning, but also just for the stamina and sustainability of teachers and students in online instruction every day in front of a computer. So we shortened our school day and we lost about 17,000 minutes that we normally would have with our students. We had to restart 8 times. You know, each time that the pandemic wreaked havoc in our schools, we would go virtual and then come back in person, and we would have these restarts or these abbreviated days. And we lost a little under 4,000 or 3,500 minutes there. We had 4 days of virtual ramp ups. I think the number that is hitting us the most, and we're still experiencing it now, is that our students had over 1,000 plus substitute touch points. That means most, if not all of our students received instruction from a substitute last year for a prolonged period of time. It's either teachers were on exemption or dealing with COVID with their family. And so our students saw more substitutes than ever before. We over 50% of our students had not seen their teachers face to face during the school year. And we had a range of exemptions. In fact, 2 of our highest performing schools experienced exemptions. What that means is that most of the students were in school face to face, yet most of the teachers, a critical mass of those teachers, were teaching from home. Well, why is that important to know? That's important to know because prior to the pandemic, only about 2% of KIPP Texas teachers taught virtually. And so they had to ramp up and build those skills. So that's unfinished learning by the numbers. So when we start to look at those numbers, that gives us a glimpse into the road ahead of us. Next slide. Our KIPPs are resilient. Why is that so important? We're going to give them the opportunity to soar. We're not going to hold them back. Well, what does that mean? That means that what we have found when we interact and engage with our students is that they're still full of love and joy and a thirst for learning. They still want to see their teachers and spend time in their school. They are running back to school. And that gives us so much joy because they say, we're ready. And so it's up to the adults, the big KIPPsters, to get ready also. And so we're using that resiliency, that grit, and that gratitude to get them there. So let's talk about acceleration and remediation. We all know what remediation is. It's kind of when a student has not reached grade level, we try to catch them up by teaching them everything that they don't have. Well, we're not going to do that. Our common approach is to go back, the common approach is to go back and reteach. We're not doing that. What we're going to do is expose our children to the grade level material, yet we're doing what we call just-in-time instruction. So that means that right before they're introduced to that grade level material or content that day or that week, we only teach the essential standards, knowledge, and skills that are paramount or vital to what they're learning. So we're not going to stop and go back and teach everything that they didn't learn in 2nd grade. We're going to give them that grade level material in 3rd grade, but only teach those standard skills and knowledge that apply to what they're learning in that moment. That's what we call acceleration. It's called acceleration because we're accelerating their learning so they can access the grade level material. So we're accelerating their learning so they can access that grade level material as opposed to remediation. Our students did not experience loss in every area, so we shouldn't make that assumption. But what we should do is assess what they need in that moment and then meet that need. So that's the difference between acceleration and remediation. Next slide. So our academic recovery approach can be bucketed into 3 things. And this is what we're really excited about. We're really excited about looking at where did we win? not just last year, it's just we had a few bright spots, but in previous years, where have we won? And we've done it in 3 areas. And so we've had an opportunity to craft some really, really strategic moves in each of these areas. Brave and belonging spaces, our cultures where our students feel affirmed and valued, spending a lot of time on brave and belonging spaces. We're talking about rigorous and on grade level instruction. I just talked to you about that. And then we talk about this additional opportunities for acceleration and intervention, whether that's after school tutorials, Saturday academies, small group instruction, and every school has what we call an acceleration block where we bring in additional tutors and interventionists to sit with students in small groups. And we're going to recapture some of those minutes that we lost. So that's the academic recovery approach that we're super excited about. And there's a ton of strategic moves under each of these that we really feel we can address unfinished learning. Well, Daphne, what's the unfinished learning? Well, it's a little bleak. We are not discouraged, but we're also facing the brutal facts of where we are. There's a lot of research out there about you shouldn't compare your previous year 2021 with the last time students took a state test. I know there's some research that's coming against that. But the reason we're doing it is because it gives us an opportunity to determine how much loss we had in the content area and to follow the cohorts of students. And so when we look at reading, given the research coming out of the Netherlands, Brazil, and other places who started school before us, what they're basically saying is that it takes about 4 months to make up a percentile. So when we apply that to our current unfinished learning, it's going to take us a little under 2 years to make up that ground in reading, a little over 2.5 for math, about 2 for science, and then you see the numbers for social studies. And then that last row says how many minutes were actually lost in those content areas. And so that gives us an opportunity to really think about where we need to double down to recover some of that lost time and how much it's going to take us. Well, the reason why we look at these numbers is now we say, what does it take to accelerate this? We can't take 2 years to get all students back on grade level. So what measures must we put in place? So this data was very important in our strategic planning. Next slide. Teachers. I told you about all that great learning for teachers this summer. Why? The research TNTP says when students who start a year behind grade level have access to strong instruction, that means these amazing teachers, we can close gaps with their peers by almost 6 months. So that's why we've spent so much time alongside talent, hiring teachers early, and then making sure they're with us and training them this summer. So we're super excited about that. We also know teachers are experiencing the pandemic. So we also have ways that we're developing, supporting, and lifting them up. One that I'll talk about is Restructured Fridays, where now our schools are getting out of school a little earlier on Friday, and we have 2 hours of professional learning with teachers. Yet some of that time when we launch has to be in small group with our teachers, taking care of them and their psychological needs, allowing them some time to reflect and some alone time so that we too take care of their needs. So we have that in place because we know it's going to be a long road ahead of us. Next slide. And these are our academic recovery priorities. The reason you're joining this call, you want to hear about these. So I'm going to go through them briefly. In-time teaching and assessments. I just talked about that. What's happening in that classroom? That's where the magic is for recovery. That's the magic. These great teachers who provide this amazing learning experience for students with rigorous curriculum. That's going to happen. Additional minutes for our students through acceleration and high impact tutoring. Social, emotional, and mental health. We have mental health and wellness specialists going into our schools, taking care of our kids, meeting with our kids, making sure their needs are met. Our high school is getting an additional dose of intervention and acceleration also, because that pathway, that runway to graduation in high school is shorter. So we're doubling down on our efforts in high school. We have a lot of great things happening. And then our students who have an IEP or learning English as one of their languages, we have special supports for them also. And most importantly, we're doing this alongside our families. We're bringing them along in that journey and doing it as a partnership with our family. We're super excited about that. Next slide. So those are investments that we're making with our ESSER funding. So you'll see things like in-time teaching. That $12 million is going to curriculum and teacher training, acceleration and high impact tutoring. Well, that's a high dollar amount, Daphne. It is, because that's where we're bringing personnel in, trained interventionists, trained tutors, who will sit in small groups with our students, whether on a Saturday or after school, or sometimes in the school day, really addressing some of that unfinished learning. So we're super excited about all the things that we're doing. And then multiple pathways to college readiness. That's that high school investment that we're making. And one of the investments we're making is putting an additional dean of academic progress in our high school. And that's going to allow every high school student an opportunity to sit with someone and talk about their GPA, their AP classes, their goals. Every month, they're going to get to sit and talk with someone about their goals, their aspirations, their GPA, make their goals, update their goals. So that's one of the investments we're making, since we know that really matters in high school. Next slide. So I've said a lot, and I know that you're eager to ask questions and get more information. So Seb and I are here to answer questions, to certainly get your feedback, and most of all, give us any type of insight, advice, and industry experience that you think will help us as we engage in academic recovery, and more importantly, educating students in a pandemic. So I'll turn the mic over to my friends on our development team. You tell us where to go next.
Thanks, Stephanie. We're going to open it up to questions from the group, so people can feel free to throw their questions in the chat or to just come off right off of mute.
I have a couple of questions. I'm Donna Williams. This is my second week. I'm the Senior Director of National and Statewide Fundraising, and it's such a pleasure to meet you both. The estimated recovery in hours and years even on reading, math, etc., that you put together, how does that compare to ISDs? Is it the same?
So I'll talk about it, Done, in terms of performance. So there are areas where we are comparable to ISDs, like you can do about demographics, but if you just do it sort of like straight comparison, there are areas in which we are below the ISDs, on par or above. But I think on an estimation basis, it's about the same. These estimated recovery times are assuming that if you did not do anything differently, if you just continued the pace in which you were going and keeping with the same instructional program, it'll take that time. So I think all over the nation, including the ISDs in Texas, are all using ESSER funding for some type of acceleration, some type of high impact tutoring to sort of diminish that time that it takes to recover. But on an estimation basis, I would probably say it's about the same.
And just one other quick question. It sounds like this summer you all did an amazing job, because it sounds like teachers were able to jump in and in a way that they hadn't before, is what I understood. And I'm wondering, were there lessons learned from that you'll use in the future, even when we're out of COVID, when we're not in COVID anymore?
That's a great question, Donna. So we have always done summer of learning with teachers and leaders. And so we previously had taken some lessons, and we're going to make it really powerful this summer. The lesson we learned in doing it is that we had to do it virtually. So that means that all the teachers across the state received the same training, whereas before we did a train the trainer model, right? So we would sit and train the regional leaders in our region, and then they would turn key it to their teams. Well, this virtual platform allowed us direct access. So they learned from the experts. And so we brought in experts from all over the country. I did sessions, and so it was directly with our teachers. So there wasn't a dilution of the information. It was directly with the experts. So the lesson we're taking for future is to continue that excellence and that high bar professional learning with access directly to teachers and leaders without having to do the train the trainer. It also gave us, Donna, more time, because we would take 2 weeks to train all the trainers, and then they go and train their folks. We didn't have to do that. We went directly. So teachers had an opportunity to have a literacy week. They had an opportunity to learn how to do brave and belonging spaces with experts all over the country and do content teams with their school teams. So we bought more time by not doing the trainer. And that's a lesson learned for the future. And so even our regional teams were like, this was amazing because we had a chance to learn as opposed to trying to plan and facilitate. We had a chance to learn, which helped with that strong start. So that's a lesson we're taking forward for the future.
Daphne, we got a question in the chat from Chris Gonzalez. Chris, do you want to come off of mute and ask your question?
I sure can. Thanks, Mr. Schmidt. So when you think from an asset frame of mind, what skills do you think our students have gained from this ever-changing learning experience that you think are going to propel them into living their greatness? And what do you think is going to and how are you framing that? Even one step further, how are you framing that in your instructional model for them?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris. And so I think what we did, we've updated the 4 beliefs or mindsets we've always had as a part of KIPP. So that first one is, I belong in this community. I feel a sense of belonging. It's the first one. And so I think that belonging, like I belong here, someone cares about me and I'm valuable to the community. And that's what we spent the first 2 weeks of school really doing, ensuring kids could say that, right? And I could say it with as much confidence as possible. But also understanding their value add to the community. So we had community agreements in classrooms. No more teacher says, here are the rules for my classroom. But instead, every teacher had to ask their kids this powerful question. How will we be together? And answering that question, that's where we come up with community norms. So that was the first one. The second is, I can be successful. And someone is going to ensure that they hold my success sacred. That's the second belief. And what that means is that we're setting goals with students. That's that 5-minute conference. And we're helping them to see what success could look like, both for themselves and their classmates and their community, their school, and their grade level. And so that confidence. But it's not just the sort of like intrinsic motivation. We're also teaching them organizational skills because our kids learn organization in virtual learning. And so we taught them a lot because you have to stay organized. Someone is like going through your backpack, making sure your locker is organized. Like we got to help you do it. And so they're taking sort of those concrete skills also. And then the other one that there's 2 more, but I'll talk about one more, Chris, because I think it's really important, is that we say to students, one of them is, I know my strengths and I know how to leverage them. So we're having our students take that free high 5 test so they know if grit or gratitude, the beauty and affirmation, like whatever their strengths are. So we're really, even our kindergarten kids, what is your strength? What's your superpower? What do you do really well? And why is that so important? How do you leverage that? And so we're having them really say, last year, what helped you to be successful? When were you a great learner? When were you a great classmate? We are taking those skills and telling them that that's your profile. That's who you are. And then how do you leverage those strengths? And I think that's an opportunity for them to learn. So we're taking those KIPP mindsets we've had probably since KIPP started, and we've sort of updated them. And so they feel a little bit more culturally responsive to our students these days. I hope that was helpful, Chris. Hi, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. No, that was really helpful snaps. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Daphne, we've heard school leaders talk to us about the needs assessment process and just how helpful that's been to really pave their path forward. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and the idea behind it and how it's going?
Yeah, thank you for that, Eric. And so there's 2 parts to a needs assessment, and that's where we talk to students about the psychological needs. How do they feel? Do they feel safe in school? Do they feel safe at home? Is there food? Is there housing? I'm asking these questions directly. We ask them very indirectly, and we ask questions like, well, when you're at home, how do you learn? So we're gathering data, and then they also take a survey if they're old enough. And we're taking that to determine what do our students need from us on the non-academic front. And Eric, a lot of the conversations that we have are actually after students take the survey. We look at the survey results and we'll say, oh, we probably need to go check in with Daphne. Her her uncle, who was the caretaker for the family, passed away from COVID. And we learned that through that needs assessment. So we go check in with Daphne and we try to make sure that she's doing okay. And, how are you getting to school? And you'll learn a kid is not on a bus route. So let's get you on a bus route. We'll learn, a student is saying, well, my mom is, still looking for a job. And so, we're still trying to find housing. And so then we connect them with our social workers to make sure that we provide for the family. And so the needs assessment has been a powerful mechanism to learn what our children need and what they're facing and all the trauma that they've experienced. And so we just take the time to really learn what they're experiencing, what they have experienced, and how we can support them in that. Because what we don't want to do is tell them to shut all of that down when you walk in the school. They can't. They bring all of that trauma in with them. And so what we want to do is create an environment where they can take off that armor and be vulnerable with us, and that they know we care about you. We care about your family and your community, and we're going to do what we need. And so we've just had so many resources to support our students. Just this morning, I heard about a family of 4, and the mom, didn't have a way to get the kids to school, and she didn't have her cell phone or her home phone. So she was just really working hard. And so we were able to get her a track phone, a donated track phone. And so now she's been able to call to get the kids on the bus route. This is the kind of stuff that matters, right? We would have been counting those kids absent or tardy every single day. But at KIPP, we want to know why. We want to know why that's happening. Because once we learn why, we can then support the family to reach their goal. Because no one wants that to happen. Those parents care about their children. They want them to be successful. But sometimes they see us as traditional districts. They think, well, in a traditional district, they don't care about that. They're like, figure it out, mom. And sometimes we have to let them know this is KIPP. We actually care, and we're going to do what we can to get your child what they need. So I know that was a lot, Eric, but I get excited about needs assessments because I actually think that's what matters, and keeping our kids with us and helping them to learn.
Daphne, can I follow up on that?
Yeah.
How are you doing in closing the gap in those start of school no-shows with just this kind of activity?
That's a great question. Calls for no-shows, they go into different buckets, but the first bucket is, I didn't know when school started, or we're still trying to get it together. We have quarantine. So we learn about that. So we're getting more students back in school from that. Another call for no-shows is we just really learn how much trauma a family has experienced. And they're like, well, it's just easier for them to go to the local school because they can walk to school, right? And so in hearing that, we start to learn more about how we can support that family. So it's really helped us with no-shows. And so what we're beginning to say is there are some students who have not chosen to return, and because they're not choosing KIPP, and let's figure out why they're not choosing KIPP. And then we have a critical mass of families who just say, in this really challenging season, school was deprioritized because right now we're just in survival mode. And so as we learn those things, as we call those parents, we're able to meet those needs. And so I think, Bill, it just falls into different categories, but I think it's made a difference in trying to close our enrollment gaps at a lot of our schools. But we're also learning, what we can do to get better for students who are not choosing us, or who are saying, I've now moved out of where, a priority zone. So my kids are no longer in a priority zone for KIPP, and now we're helping them to get engaged with a different school. And so I think there's just so many learnings you have from no-shows.
I got one other follow-up on that, Daphne. Seba has referred to the political theater that all of us have been dealing with, and that is on again, off again, on again, off again, from day to day, almost hour to hour. It's hard to know what kind of guidance you're going to get out of the courts or TEA. How are you coping with that environment? And what are we doing about creating a path to virtual learning for those families that are not comfortable sending their kids back to school?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about Remote Learning Academy, and then I'll also pass the mic to Seba, since she's also navigating this rough terrain. What we are doing right now, as I speak, it started this week, is what we call RLA. It's the Remote Learning Academy, and it's for students who have tested positive for COVID or are close contact in our schools. They're receiving virtual instruction from a teacher at least 4 hours a day. And so today I just looked at the attendance. There are 100, right around 112 students who are receiving virtual learning, and more will be enrolled each day as they go out for close contact or positive COVID bill. So we're educating those students and we're making sure. And then on the sort of political front for virtual school, we are exploring virtual school. It's something that we certainly will learn from what we're doing on our remote learning academy, should we stand up a virtual learning academy. But what we feel confident right now is that students who are in quarantine, whether it's a close contact or positive student, is now coming, they're coming to remote learning academy. And so I think by Monday, once students get Chromebooks, we hope to almost be, close to over 200 students who will be doing remote learning. But right now we're getting them Chromebooks, make sure they have Google access, hiring more teachers in the remote learning academy. But it's been really powerful to see that program stand up. Seb, anything to add?
Thanks, Steph. I think, I think we're just I'll just start by saying, I think that as a state, we're in a really challenging time with COVID. And I think that we've been really fortunate in our schools that despite what's going on politically around us with court orders and court cases, we've really been focused in our schools on safety. And we have done a campaign internally with our families and with our staff around the importance of wearing a mask in school. And, it's working. It's working. As I said at the beginning, anecdotally, almost 100% of our students and staff are wearing their mask. I think our biggest issue is when the medical masks get a little loose and they slip below the nose and we have to remind kids to pull it back up, and they're willing to do that immediately. They just need a little reminder, especially the little pre-K babies. And so that's what we're focused on. And we're really fortunate that that's our battle. That it's how do we constantly remind our teachers to remind our kids to pull their masks up, that's where we are. Because we know that mask wearing in our schools is really critical. And so that's what we're focused on. And we're just going to stay the course with that, and retain that focus and retain that lens of safety. And I think that is also why our kids are showing up to school and why we're seeing such high attendance rates compared to our neighboring districts, and why we're continuing to see, higher enrollment rates than our neighboring traditional school districts as well, because our families feel safe coming to our schools. We're also seeing, while we are seeing hundreds of COVID cases and quarantines at this point, we are seeing lower rates than what we're hearing about in neighboring traditional districts. And so we know that these safety procedures work, and we're just going to keep at them with consistency and with excellence. And that's our best go.
Seba and Daphne, we're in our last 3 minutes here. I was wondering if you could close us by just sharing, this is day 10. What would you consider to be the biggest win from these first 10 days?
Well, I would say for us, the biggest win is when I walk into a classroom and I just see this incredible focus on teaching and learning with empathy. Our kids are engaged. They're so excited to be at school. And our schools are joyful, academically excellent places. I mean, I just can't even tell you, I was sitting on a little baby chair outside in a hallway yesterday. And I can't tell you how many little kindergartners and first graders, the joy, you can see it through their masks, right? Those smiles, just walking by, so happy to be at school, feeling such joy and warmth. And then you watch their teacher interacting with them. And then you walk into their classroom and you hear them so focused on the learning. And it's the second week of school. And you think, this is right. This is what learning is supposed to be about. This is what school is supposed to be about. And how fortunate are we that we get to be a part of that? And so that's why my heart is full today on day 10.
Thanks, Seba.
Daphne?
Daphne, yeah, same question.
Ditto everything Seba said with a joy. And the fact that teachers are committed to KIPP and that we are like 98.2% fully staffed when other districts are saying they're 76, 80, 82%. The commitment from our teachers to create that joy that Seba's talking about, that's an amazing, amazing win. They said they feel psychologically safe and they feel joy coming to work every day. And in a pandemic, that's a win for us.
Thank you both. Seba, would you like to tee up our closing video as we say goodbye to everybody?
Absolutely. Well, we just wanted to leave you with a really special video today that I think really captures the heart of KIPP. So we hope you enjoy it. Thank you for being a part of our team and family. Thank you for your love, your support. We couldn't do this without you. And we're really grateful for you. So we hope you visit our school soon.
Are you ready? I used to be shy. I didn't want people to hear my voice, afraid that they'll discover my English wasn't perfect. I preferred to stay quiet, noticed but not seen. But KIPP has given me confidence. I've been a KIPPster for 6 years now, and we are pushed every single day to express ourselves. In my writing classes and in my art and theater classes, I have learned that words and feelings don't all have to be locked away. I have a voice, so I'm going to try here in this letter to unlock myself, to let my words out and you in. This year has been really hard, but I know you already know that. There's so many things I miss. I miss hugging people so much it hurts. There are times when I feel like everything has changed too fast, that I don't even remember what normal is or if we'll ever get back to it. And I have so many feelings jumbled inside, I feel as if I might burst. But I also know that this year isn't only about challenges. Our teachers have taught us to look at things from different perspectives. And when I turn this pandemic year around and around in my head and try to see it from another point of view, I see love. The cafeteria workers still smile. Their mouths are hidden behind masks, but I can tell by their eyes they're happy to see us. My bus driver, Miss Sasha, still has so much patience, even with my little brother. The front office workers, although they're busy taking temperatures and checking people in, still have jokes to share with students. The custodians still recognize almost every single student by name. My school principal is one of the most hard-working people I know. And students and teachers still make every day fun. A year ago, our world changed. We used to connect in very different ways. But now, even through a computer screen, the connection is still there, strong as ever. COVID hasn't broken our sense of community, it has built it, and I have never been more proud to be a KIPPster.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Seba and Daphne.
Thank you all for joining us today. Take care.